Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 421 of the Juicebox Podcast. On today's show, Rachel is here. She's a type 1 who's a CDE, and she's Australian. You know what I mean? Right. Okay. Well, that was awkward. Let's get to the rest of it. I don't think I've laughed this much in a long time while interviewing someone for the podcast. Rachel Baker is fantastic. She brings a perspective that's a little different, but not as different as you would think. And she has a lot of great insights about a number of the things that we talk about here on the podcast. This episode was both fun and insightful, thanks to Rachel. Please remember while you're listening that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. Before the end of the year gets here, I'd like to remind you that by visiting T1DExchange/Juicebox, you'd be supporting the podcast and type 1 diabetes research. So if you have a cell phone or a computer and you have a few minutes and you live in the United States of America, and you have type 1 diabetes or love someone who does, swing on by and see what you can do. Join the registry, support the podcast, support research. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the tubeless insulin pump that my daughter has been wearing since she was 4 years old, Omnipod. Omnipod would love to send you a free, no-obligation demo. All you have to do to get it is go to myomnipod.com/juicebox. It'll just show up in your mailbox. After you go to the website and fill out the stuff. And to learn more about the Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor, dexcom.com/juicebox. That's it. Links to all of the advertisers are right there in the show notes of your podcast player and at juiceboxpodcast.com. Let's get going.
My name is Rachel Baker. I'm a credentialed diabetes educator that works in Brisbane, in Australia. I myself have type 1 diabetes and have done so for 13 years, so relatively a baby, I would say. I'm just about to study my nurse practitioners in diabetes education, and I just love the flexible approach to managing type 1.
So you got a very, very quick response from me because you said that in your work, you talk to people in similar ways that we talk on the podcast. And I'm very interested in that idea. So I got back to you very quickly. And so I want to pick through that a little bit. But first, let me think. 13 years, 2005?
2000 hang on, maybe I've done the wrong math.
No, maybe I'm wrong.
2007.
Okay. So wait, has Arden had diabetes? Oh no, you know what I just did? That was interesting. Sorry. Arden was born in 2004. You said 13 years, which seemed like 1 year less than Arden has had diabetes. So I said 2005, even though Arden wasn't diagnosed until 2006, which would have made me say 2007. So I sometimes confuse the year she was born with the year she was diagnosed. And I've just done it there.
Okay, good.
So let me just start over again.
Good, I was going to say. So
Rachel, were you diagnosed in 2007?
Yes, that's correct.
That's amazing. Yeah. It's interesting. It's in that middle ground. It's a shorter compared to some people, but very long time to have type 1 diabetes.
Yeah, I know. I do feel in that middle ground. I feel like I'm in that middle ground.
Yeah, right. Like you're ready for your second contract, but you're not going to make the big money. Not yet. You know what I mean? Like in sports.
Yeah. Yep.
Like you've proven yourself and you get to stay a little longer, but you're not an all-star yet. So
yeah, exactly that.
But you guys, do you even have sports, or you guys just get on those kangaroos and ride them around with a stick? Like polo?
No, we've got Australian football.
Do those things really fight? Do you ever see them? Like, you ever outside and you're like, there's a kangaroo beating up a mailbox or anything like that? Nothing like that ever really happens?
Yeah. I mean, not a mailbox, but yeah, kangaroos to other kangaroos. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Oh,
if you're out rural, yeah.
How come that Instagram is not just filled with that. If I lived in Australia, my Instagram would just be videos of kangaroos kicking the shit out of each other. I'd be like, look, we have the UFC down here for marsupials. Everyone look, and I'd have the most popular Instagram ever. I don't know. Somebody's got to get on it. Anyway. So 13 years, but Australia. And Australia is really interesting. And as I told you right before we started recording, you're the third person from Australia I've recorded with this in like 7 days. Your healthcare system and what's available there for you has been very kind of stringent, but it's getting better, but it's getting better for cash patients, right? Is that the extent so far?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. I mean, I find it very interesting comparing our healthcare, I guess, accessibility with diabetes compared to overseas, because I feel like we're always a couple of steps behind. My passion is in technology and all the different types of therapies. So my number one thing that I do is constantly stay up to date with what's being released. But you're right in saying it feels like, particularly with CGM, and I think you've mentioned this a lot on your podcast, and I truly believe CGM is the game changer. Whether you've got a pump or not, I think a pump is excellent. But CGM for me, and in my clinical experience, is the game changer. But if you're in Australia, you can only get subsidised CGM if you're under 21, if you're planning pregnancy or you're pregnant, or you're over 21 and you have a concession card. So you're reaching a sort of a low income, or you're achieving a low income that enables you to access it. But otherwise, I mean, if you want to run the Dexcom system, it is about $5,000 per year.
That's $5,000 a year. That is just a lot of money for most everybody. You know,
of course.
Yeah. It's, and at the same time, if you really knew, and you had $5,000 that you could shave out of your budget somewhere, you'd do it. And I see people do those things all the time. Make those, it's funny. I was going to say concessions because you said concession card, and I'm still not sure why it's called a concessions card, but we'll get back to that. What is the concession that you can't afford it?
Yeah, so you can have a healthcare card or a concession card, but basically the government deems you to be in a certain threshold in terms of the income, or if you're a full-time student, so if you're in high school.
I don't want to fall down a rabbit hole this early in an episode, but concession means the same thing in Australia that it does everywhere else, right? like
I would think so.
Like you're making a concession. Like if you and I started, let's say we're married, and you point out something about me that is wrong, and I disagree with it, and eventually through just browbeating and constant torture, I make the concession that you're correct. You're understanding the word concession correctly, right?
It's interesting, Scott, because yes, that is the meaning of the word, but I'm so used to associating it with the concession and the healthcare card that I've actually forgot that is the meaning of the word. I associate it with a certain income bracket.
It's funny because then there's either a definition for it that I don't know, or the idea is that the government of Australia is conceding that you can't afford your healthcare. All right. Okay. Yeah. This doesn't matter, but it really struck me. Seriously, I'm so sorry. I'm like, let's pick this word apart a little longer. It just really doesn't make any sense to me, but I'm going to get past it. It's a concession card. And so, but under 20, isn't it interesting how this works? When they put it into play for you, it's if you're under 21. So my thought there is they're saying a child. So they're saying, look, we don't want kids to suffer low blood sugar incidences, so we'll let them have them, which is a complete undervaluing of what CGM does. And then they say if you're pregnant, because of course you have to have a grade A1C while you're pregnant for the baby. But what about everyone else? Like, why is it not important for everyone else to have that level of health and outcome? You know what I mean? I know it's money, but still, it's a weird place to draw the line, I think.
Yeah. I work a lot with adolescents in that teenage years as they transition to their adulthood. And, 21 is the year that they're finishing uni, they're moving out of home, they're trying to get their first job. And it's awful when they hit that, as soon as they have their 21st birthday, it's taken away and they lose that subsidy, and they're not in a position usually, most of the time at that age of 21 to fork out an extra $5,000 a year on their diabetes. And that's, of course, that's on top of all the insulin and, if they've got an insulin pump or anything else like that. So, yeah, it is a huge issue that we're facing. But I mean, in the defense of the government, each year they are providing us with greater subsidies. So the pregnancy aspect is new. Mm-hmm. But like you mentioned with pregnancy, I have this real, I don't know what, a complex with how tight we manage during pregnancy. And of course, I love that. I love running tight. But why do we do that when it's at the cost of another human being? You're growing this fetus, into utero. Why are we so good at managing diabetes so tightly when there's another life on the line? But if it's just your own life and your own diabetes, we seem to be, oh, that's fine, a little bit laxy-daisy. And we actually completely adjust the targets. So I don't understand why we have that double standard between pregnancy and just everyday management.
Yeah, it's confounding, isn't it? It really is. That the same doctor who's telling you have to have this is what needs to be, this is what health looks like. The baby comes slipping, sliding out, and it's out, and then you show back up at your endo and they're like, all right, well, back to whatever. Good for you.
Yeah.
You're gonna
exactly.
They'll support it with saying things like, there's a lot going on with the baby right now and you're tired and everything, and you don't want to burn out. Like, it's always that you don't want to burn out. Yep. And I really think that you can boil it down to the timing of the insulin, right? Like, you have to, having to think about pre-bolusing at a meal is a really strange thing. And if you can't get it into such practice that it just becomes common for you and you don't think about it, and I don't see it happen for everybody. I don't even see it happen in my own home. Like, I'm the one yelling pre-bolus all the time. And any problem that my wife ever has while she's managing my daughter, it stems from not pre-bolusing. Like, she does everything else exactly the way she should, but she works from home sometimes. So if she finds herself around Arden, she's working. So she's not, and her work is different than mine. Mine's a little more, I don't know, artsy, I guess, in a strange way. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm in and out of my head a lot, but she's in her head constantly. She's sitting and thinking and writing and or talking to someone. She doesn't have time to be considering, oh, we have to pre-bolus. And I force myself to. Yeah. And so I think that there's something in there with that. Like, if you didn't have to think about that one aspect, I would think that the burnout rate would change. Because I'm about to have back on, did you follow the woman who I had on, who I talked to her through every trimester of her pregnancy? Have you heard that?
Yes. I saw the first few of those. Yeah. I heard the first few. Yes.
So she's coming back on soon, because I said, let's do one a few months after you've had the baby and you're out of your mind. I thought that would be fun. And I'm already seeing when you're already just like, what did we do? Why did we do this? And I haven't spoken to her, but I'm seeing on her social media that she looks a little tired and that it's making her diabetes more difficult. And I think that's really what we're talking about. I can't wait to speak to her to find out exactly if that's how she feels. But that, from my perspective, is the most difficult thing. And then I think the doctors believe that that's true and don't want to, again, burn you out. So then they start saying, well, let's just be a little more loose with it. But you said you really don't like that. Can you tell me why?
Yeah, I think I personally, I think there is a middle ground. And my goal always, in my own personal diabetes and my patients as well, is to find that middle ground where you can run that sort of type management, but not always hit that burnout. And I think it comes down to, you know how you mentioned about your timing of your bolus. 100%. I think you can have your dose bang on, but if you miss that timing, that's everything. That's everything. All your hard work essentially is completely thrown off. And I always say, if you can just aim, because pre-bolusing is hard. In real life, pre-bolusing is hard. So if you can aim for at least 80% of your day, or 2 out of 3 of your meals per day, just to reduce that post-meal spike, at least, 2 out of 3 times a day, I think we can find some sort of a happy medium of living a life where your diabetes isn't taking over, but then not having that complete roller coaster on your CGM ride. But I do agree, it sort of sounds like a throwaway comment. Oh, why can't we just aim as tight as we do in pregnancy for the rest of our lives? Yeah, well, of course that's going to be hard work, but I think that I really think that there's a way that you can sort of meet in the middle and not be too stringent with your management, but sort of find that happy medium. And at the times that you're experiencing burnout, and this is sort of what I do with my patients, at times you're going to be over diabetes. I think it's okay. If you have a week where you just don't pre-bolus that week, that's okay, as long as you sort of recognize it, sit with it, and then you can sort of rebuild and move on from there.
Yeah, I guess the most difficult part as a person is to not get stuck in that new normal that you make for yourself. Like, I'm just going to ease up this week becomes, I'm just going to ease up this month becomes, well, in the spring, like, you know what I mean? Like, and that happens to people all the time. It really is interesting because what you're battling against is, it's architecture of people. Like it's different types of how people's minds work. All you have to do is look online at people who are like super into fitness, right? And they're just, you look at them and you're like, they're chiseled out of stone, these people. Like they're talking about micronutrients and I don't know if I followed them for a lifetime, if they'd always be doing that, but some people would be. Some people are just wired like that's what they care about first. And so they do it. And so I don't think that a person who doesn't think to pre-bolus or really struggles with remembering it is a bad person. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that they're wired differently. Maybe they're just a little more, fanciful in their minds and things just kind of float away on them. And, they're more in the moment and not as structured. And then it's easy to look back and say, well, make yourself more structured. It's your health. But, I can agree with academically, but you can't just change how you function. The real answer to all of this is insulin that works more quickly. And that fixes everybody's problem. If you take away needing to pre-bolus, I lose my podcast, but that's okay. I'll be tired of it by then anyway. But it just changes everything. If you could eat and bolus at the same time and have the same results you did as pre-bolusing and eating, it would change diabetes for everybody. Yeah. I don't know. Well, you're going to need a magic wand, or you could just traipse out there into the whatever that is there where you guys live and find some bug that we haven't discovered yet and milk it. Did you see that? Did you see that thing recently? The venom of something they're looking at for as insulin. What the hell? Jenny sent it to me. Snail venom.
No.
Did you see that?
Was it as insulin though? I did see this thing about the snail.
Sea snail venom used to create a new type of insulin that could provide a safer, more effective treatment for type 1 diabetes. I don't know. I mean, obviously,
I didn't even click on it. I didn't click on it. I just saw it and I was like, no.
Well, because I saw it and thought the same thing, and then Jenny was like emailing it to me. She's like, "Wouldn't this be fun?" And I was like, "Yes, Jenny, it would be very fun if cone snails spray insulin venom." Oh, here it is. Cone snails spray insulin venom into the water to lower the blood sugar of fish. Oh, the snail uses the insulin to slow, so it makes the blood sugar low of the things around it so that it can either escape or attack it. And it works more quickly. This snail insulin is faster acting than regular human insulin and, quote, ready to go. So what so right now, Rachel, quit your job and start raising cone snails. You're going to be rich.
I'm going to start putting that on my pump. I'm going to get some snails.
You're going to need a lot of them. And why, a little quick thing, a little question to the Daily Mail. Why are the women on your website naked all the time? Jesus, I'm trying to find out about snail venom. There's a girl with a mink coat that's not dressed. What is that? That's not the news, United Kingdom. That's pornography. My goodness. All right. Jesus. That took me by surprise. That girl was like from the 70s. Oh my gosh. Anyway. Oh, sorry. I don't know that snail venom is the answer, but I love that people are, looking into it. Anyway, so you're teaching first let me understand, you are a CDE, and does that about mean the same thing that it does here in America? Like, is there a doctor in the practice, but you're doing most of the work?
Exactly. No. We got an excellent team of doctors. I work in the public and the private space. So I work in sort of a large diabetes hospital center. And then I also work privately. And it's different. There's a bit of different level of autonomy between the roles.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, privately, I'm just consulting the patients and then just reporting back to the endocrinologists. But I guess in the public space, it is more of a team effort, I would say.
Okay.
But yeah, my answer to that question is yes.
So I come in as a person with diabetes. I have my visit. I see you mostly. Is that right? Does the doctor come in to see me at all, or is it you during the visit?
Interestingly, it depends on the age. So if you are coming into the adolescent clinic, the younger adult clinic, or even, pediatrics is a lot more work with the parents. But if you're in the adolescent or the transition clinic, you'll spend a lot of time with the educator. And then, of course, you've got the psychologist and the dietitian as well. And then you'll have a little bit of time with the doctor. But more so, your time is spent with the educator. But when they hit that adult space, it's quite the opposite. They don't really want to see the educator. They sort of just want to go in, see the doctor. They know what they know, get their scripts, and then go on.
You really turn into more of the nice lady with the prescription pad, and I just need to get in and out. Now, is that for? What's my question here? Do we just make a concession that some adults have just fallen into a pattern and we can't help them anymore, so we just support them along the way they've decided to manage themselves? Or are you still trying to improve things for them? Because that's an interesting thing. Because adults can be very good at coming in and, what do I want to say? Presenting a story that they think you're going to accept, and it'll sound good enough to you that you let it go, but they may still be struggling. Is there less of the picking through the situation and trying to help than there is with kids?
I think so. I think because if you haven't got that level of engagement, it's hard. It's hard. They really sometimes are not willing to sit and have a conversation about their diabetes. And it can be on two ends of the spectrum. Either one, they present this beautiful story. Everything's fine. I'm okay. I change my insulin cartridge, every 7 days, change my can every 7 days, but I'm fine. Everything's fine. They just got a HbA up in the tens. Or it's going to be the other way. And they're there and they really want your help, and they're really ready to engage. But I would say more so option A as you've described. If they're absolutely at breaking point, I guess it's when they do that for a couple of years and then eventually they sort of come back in and they're at breaking point, then they're ready to have a conversation.
So that's what you're finding too, is that, so do some people never quote unquote break? And by that, I mean, come to the realization that they need to do something more than they're doing? Do some people just cruise to the end with just whatever's just keeping them alive, but some people just have that come to Jesus kind of moment where they're like, I have to do something about this? Is that basically how it goes?
Yeah, that is. Yeah, that really is. It is exactly like that.
What do you see a difference between, I know this is a huge generalization, but do you see a difference between the person who's just okay with my A1C's 9, this is all I'm willing to do, and the people who have that moment? Is it a health scare, or what? Is there something specific that pushes them? What do you see? I'm sure there's varying things, but
I think it is either a health scare, or often they sort of present as in, I can't feel like this anymore, in terms of how tired or how exhausted they are. And I think it comes to a point where it all piles up and their body, obviously running with the glucose, up in a higher range for that period of time. I think eventually they just sort of think, what, I've had enough of feeling like this. And they sort of hit a turning point. Sometimes it can be something, if they've gone through a divorce or something big happens in their life. But often I think they just come in and they just are like, I've had enough, I'm at breaking point and I've had enough and I need to change.
Okay. Yeah. So I see people doing it for others a lot. It's always like, I realize it's hurting my relationship, or I want to be around for my children, or like that kind of thing. Like there's always that, and it makes me wonder if there's not a way from the clinical side to create a relationship where they want to do it for you. And I'm going to say something that might be incredibly silly, but this is going to sound weird, I guess, but my son's an incredible outfielder. You have baseball there. The guy, you know, so he can, you know, it's fascinating how good he is at it. Catching a ball that is whacked around out of nowhere. Like if you and I stood next to him when the baseball was like struck, you know, 400 feet into a gap on a field, you and I would still be standing next to each other while he was handing the ball, catching the ball. I'd be like, Rachel, wow, look, he ran all the way over there. That was amazing, wasn't it? And you'd be like, did you even see the ball? And I'd say, no, I didn't. And like, you know, like that would be how it would go. But when he was young and he was learning, he did it for his coach. When he was 9 and 10 years old, I'd ask him, like, how do you do that? And his main, like, stressor, I guess, was he didn't want to let this man down that he liked, who expected something from him. And it wasn't, you know, it wasn't a crazy relationship. It was like, you have to do this or, you know, you're off the team. They were little kids, but they had built a relationship together and he didn't want to let the guy down. Like that was sort of it. Like he felt like he was, I don't know what the word is, responsible to someone other than himself, or I don't know what that is, but I wonder about that a lot. If, you know, maybe the things that we ask people to do aren't always reasonable. Like go catch it for yourself. Make your A1C6, do it for you. A lot of people have self-esteem issues, and doing things for themselves is difficult. You know what I mean? And like, I don't know if there's a way to build a team mentality into it or not, but I sometimes think the podcast does that a little bit. You know, I would say that in the beginning of the podcast, it flew in the face of what people thought of as how to share online. You know, there used to, and I'm sure there still is, but I don't pay much attention to it. The idea of like, don't tell people your successes, it'll make them feel bad. And I don't buy into that. I think your success should be looked at as possibility, not as a winning and losing scenario. It's not like I succeeded and you didn't. It's I succeeded and you could. Look, it's possible. That person's doing it. If that person can do it, you could do it. I don't know. I think there's something to that. Anyway.
But listening to your podcast, that's what I, you know, took away from it. Right back at the start. I was new to a CGM, you know, this is right back when I was starting my diabetes education course. Prior to that, I was a nurse in emergency, you know, I never sort of specialized in diabetes. And I started using CGM. And, you know, when you start with a CGM and you see that roller coaster and you think, there's got to be a way that this can be done differently, you know, and you try to talk to your diabetes team about it, but they get sort of a little bit stuck on your insulin to carb ratio, insulin sensitivity factor. But listening to your podcast gives you that ability to see that there's another way, you know, and you're not the only one thinking it, because, I mean, how many people, you know, look at how many followers you've got now on this podcast, or how many listeners. Everyone can sort of, well, not everyone, but I guess it depends on if they've got that motivation. But if you can see that there's another way to manage your diabetes, and if you hear someone else achieve those results, it's inspirational. You want to do it, you know, you want to go after it because it feels possible.
In the middle of this holiday season, while you're doing things for other people, don't forget to do something good for yourself. The easiest thing that I can think of is to go to myomnipod.com/juicebox, fill out the tiniest bit of information, and to have Omnipod send you a free, no obligation demo of the Omnipod tubeless insulin pump. That way, when you get it, you can try it on or put it on your kid so you can see what it's like. I just wore a Dexcom CGM for 10 days, forgot it was there. And I've worn an Omnipod in the past, same thing happened to me. You just don't notice it after a little while, but that may be hard for you to believe if you never try. Well, this is your opportunity to try. Try for free, try with no obligation, and it's a non-functioning pod, so there's nothing to worry about. You just put it on to get a feel for it. myomnipod.com/juicebox. If you're MDI right now and thinking about getting a pump, I think tubeless is the way to go. And if you're using another tube pump and you're thinking, I would like one without tubing, well, one exists. And this is an easy way for you to see if it's right for you. The Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor is fantastic for anyone using insulin because you get to see the impact that food has on your blood sugar. And then you get to see how fast it moves in different directions. Does pasta make your blood sugar go up? Does it go up fast? Is that as fast as eating an orange? Who would know? Well, I would know, and so would everyone else who's ever worn a Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor. You owe it to yourself. If you're using insulin without a Dexcom, you're flying blind. Having a Dexcom is like having a co-pilot on both sides of you and one sitting on your head. 3 co-pilots, which I guess goes against the word co-pilots. You'd have to call them tri-pilots. But now we're really getting off the subject. My point is that being able to see the direction and speed of blood sugar is monumental. And being able to get an alert that lets you know if you've left the range that you've set, that is like the whole ball game right there. Dexcom also allows you to share blood sugars with up to 10 followers. So that could be your spouse, your kid, your grandmom, whoever you want. There's 10 of them though. So you'll probably give it to your school nurse if you wanted to, or even if you've got like a well-meaning neighbor. I'm kidding about that. But you could if you wanted to. Say you were the person with this neighbor that was like, oh my God, this is the greatest guy in the world. He could help me with my blood sugar. Boom, done. Android and iPhone. So that pretty much covers everyone holding a cell phone, and everyone holding the cell phone pretty much covers everybody alive. It's worth checking out. And you can at dexcom.com/juicebox. And if you want to learn more, you just fill out the little form at the bottom. If you currently get your insurance through the U.S. military VA, you might really like what you hear. So go check it out. Dexcom.com/juicebox. Use the same continuous glucose monitor that my daughter does. And please don't forget T1dexchange.org/juicebox. Add your name to the registry. Help type 1 diabetes research while supporting the podcast. All right, let's get back to Rachel because there's a lot more coming. I agree. I really do. I think, and thank you. I'm glad it ended up being valuable for you, but I just can't, I couldn't agree more. Like, I don't hide success, then nobody knows what it looks like. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's nothing to aspire to if there's nothing to aspire to. And so while everyone who's doing well is just hiding because they don't want to quote unquote make anybody feel badly. Well, these people already feel badly. Their A1Cs are 8.5 and they're spiking to 300 after every meal. They feel as badly as they're going to feel, and I don't buy into that argument that, there'll be somebody out there that can't handle seeing it. And I don't disbelieve that. I do think there'll be somebody, that will look and it'll just be too much for them. But, say you're going to overwhelm 1 out of 10 people or 10 out of 100 people, and those people are going to be really hurt by seeing someone else's success. You can't ignore the 90 out of 100 people who may not be hurt by it. Like, why do we all? Yeah. You don't want to leave anybody behind. And I don't think the podcast does leave people behind. I think even those 10 people who are going to be like, oh my gosh, like this is impossible. And here's even more proof it's impossible. I'm bad at this and they're good at it. I think if they try the podcast, they'll find out that it could be them as well.
Yeah. And if I've got, I've got my, I wear a Dexcom and I've got it running to my watch, and often I'll show patients, oh, look, you can have your Dexcom run to your watch, if this is people that are considering CGM. And let's say it's a day that I've got a beautiful, lovely flatline, the dream. It's interesting to see their reactions. It's exactly as you said. They either see it and they go, oh my goodness, how do you keep yourself running steady for that period of time? Right. And they're inspired by it. Or the reaction is, oh, I could never do that. You're a completely different person to me. You're a diabetes educator. That's why, you've got your nice steady flat line. So they create a disconnect between the difference of them to me, and then I try and sit for the next hour to break down that disparity, that no, we're both just two, normal people.
Right.
And you have much as an opportunity to achieve a flat line as I do. You know what I mean?
And that's self-esteem and self-confidence. And the goal then is to show them, look, I'm not special. Like, I just know a couple of things you don't know, but here's the good news. I can tell them to you, and they're not difficult.
Yeah.
It's not going to be trigonometry. Don't worry. And that's the other problem, is that they believe it's so completely, like numbers oriented, and you're either a numbers person or you're not. I've heard people talk about diabetes in such basic ways, like, well, I'm not a numbers person, I can't do it. And I say to them, look, this podcast exists for a number of reasons. One of them is because I don't like math. And, and one of the other reasons is I don't want to count carbs. And another reason is, like, there's all kinds of reasons why, like, this podcast is it's the child of my laziness, basically. There's things that people told me diabetes was, and I was like, I don't want to do that, but I don't want my daughter to be unhealthy. So couldn't there just be another way? And those ways are really, to me, they're explainable. So I'm not trying to take credit here. I'm trying to understand. Are you using some of the things? Well, I guess the first question has to be, how much of the podcast you use in your personal life?
A lot. A lot. Yeah, a lot. And I think it's a combination, it is very similar to bumping and nudging, using that sort of concept, and then just personal experience. I'm not afraid of, okay, last time I ate this food, I went high, so I'm going to put in extra insulin this time.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit and count the carbohydrates of it, but I'm going to throw in an extra 2 units because I know that I need it. And then I think listening to the podcast gives me that push to do it. And then I think when I entered into being a diabetes educator, it's scary to then relay that to your patients, because it's one thing for me to say, oh, I'm happy to throw in an extra 2 units, but then to portray that to or advise your patients, okay, if you have that food next time, just throw in an extra couple of units, see what happens. Go with your gut, go with your diabetes intuition, and see what happens. So I think I just kept coming back to the podcast just to listen, and to know that there's other diabetes educators and that there's other patients with type 1 that confidently and safely can use those principles.
Yeah. What that part you just spoke about, that's where it happens. Like, without that, it's useless to tell somebody, because aside from being able to say to somebody, just use more insulin, what you're going to tell them is, and you said it earlier, well, maybe the insulin to carb ratio for that meal is different. And it is. But are you now asking people to, on Tuesdays when they make meatloaf, believe that they have a different insulin to carb ratio than they do on Wednesday when they have a Caesar salad? And am I really supposed to think about all that for the rest of my life? Wouldn't it just be easier if on meatloaf night my blood sugar got higher? And, like that kind of thing. Which is why the way I try to talk on the podcast is so fluid, which is, I just did it the other day. Somebody online in the private Facebook group was like, I don't know what the problem is here. I was like, you didn't use enough insulin. And they said, well, my carb ratio works great for other meals. I'm like, I don't care for that one. It didn't work. So more. How much more? I don't know. Yeah. More. Try more and see what happens, and keep playing with it until you figure it out. And the decision to speak that honestly with people, I think that when this podcast is over and when I look back, that decision just to be honest with people might end up being the most important thing that I did here, because that's the moment where everyone else just says, I don't know, maybe we should look at your ratios, or, they take it back to technical, and technical is not what you need in that situation, because everyone's not living in a petri dish, right? They have a life they're trying to go through. It's not all clinical. It's easy to talk about it clinically, and I want people to understand it clinically. It's why we talked about glycemic load and index so much. And, but that's not that's not a fun thing to remember in the middle of, in the middle of a beach vacation where you're like, I'm going to get French fries at the beach. Like you don't want to sit around and go, I wonder what the glycemic load and index are of these fries. And, you just want your brain to go French fries, more, longer.
Yep.
Do it.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. Yeah. There's two things that I often have taken away from your podcast that I often drill into my consults. And the first one is, if you're high, you need more insulin. That's it. If you're low, we need less. Yeah. So we could sit around here, for half an hour and try and figure out why you had that particular high. But like you say, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. We need more insulin. Let's do it and move on. And the second thing that you often talk about is, I think it was in one of your earlier podcasts, you said, I'm just this guy. And I think, I look at the numbers, I see a number, and I don't have this big lot of emotion that's attached to it. Diabetes is such an emotional condition sometimes. I just think because, the chronic nature of it and how much it can sometimes wear you down, people can get so exhausted and so emotionally attached to seeing those numbers each day. But if you can remove the emotion from it and just look at a number and be like, okay, I need more insulin here, or I need less, or I'm rising, let's work on this. It's a totally different, it feels like you're living with a totally different condition when you can remove that emotional side from it.
I'm glad you heard that. And I completely agree. Obviously, I said it, so it'd be weird if I didn't agree with it. It'd be strange. It'd be strange if I was just saying things and then in the back of my head going, I don't think that at all. No, but I that sounds like something fun to say. No, the being disconnected from it is incredibly important. And I wasn't always. There used to be times where I'd see a number and I was cursing, sometimes out loud, sometimes just in my head. And I thought, I screwed this up. And then it's a cascade then. I screwed this up. It's going to hurt her. She's going to be high. This is, I knew it. Like I'm killing her. Like, like that whole stuff, just all that. You have to stop your brain from doing that to you. You can't let that happen because listen, yes, the number's not great, but no, I'm not killing her because her blood sugar went to 160. Right. So, I need to, the most important thing to do is to step back, see what happened, figure out how to fix it now, and how to keep it from happening next time, is obviously the next step. But to feel badly about it it's just madness, and it's not going to stop. It's going to make you crazier and crazier as it goes until your brain does you the ultimate kindness that a brain can do, which is it's going to make you stop worrying about it so that you don't make yourself crazy. And it's a very human idea, except, not being upset that your neighbor cuts the lawn at 7 a.m., like finding a way to let that go is different than letting go that your blood sugar is 200 after every meal. That has real consequences. And my neighbor is a lunatic, in case you're wondering. So want to hear something really sad? Hold on a second. I live across the street from people. And it's a weird mix. There's a much older woman and what appears to be her nephew, but he's a grown man. He's older than I am, and they live together, which is already strange. Oh. But sometimes in the middle of the night, I am not making this up, you'll hear this metal snapping. I can't do it. I don't have anything, but it's just like, you'll hear this outside. And if you look, this woman in her 70s is outside on her knees with a pair of kitchen shears cutting weeds. And that snapping are the blades coming together. I don't want to make fun of people's mental illness, but I think there's something incredibly wrong. And
that's a coping mechanism. Something's going on there.
Listen, no joking. At some point, her brain said, I can't handle what I'm seeing. Go take care of the weeds. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know that it's much different than I can't handle seeing these blood sugars over and over and over again. I'm going to stop worrying about them. I'm going to let them go. Yep. And throw call, whatever people say to themselves, I'll leave it up to, I'll leave it up to Jesus. We'll see what happens, and All the time I tell people, like, I see people praying online about their blood sugars. I'm like, don't pray. Jesus doesn't have your meter. Just give yourself more insulin. Like, I'll tell you what, you pray all you want, but I think if Jesus had your PDM in his hand, he'd be bolusing. So, let's get to it. And so I don't know. I think there's something in there where it's simple to say people need to be empowered. But that doesn't really, that's kind of a bullshit statement. Like, right? Like, it's a nice thing people say, and then some people are really good at it and some people aren't. You say, well, then you put it on the people who aren't. Well, I guess, they didn't try hard enough. Like, that's not right. You know what I mean? It's not about how hard you try. There's no one with type 1 diabetes that wants to be unhealthy. That person doesn't exist,
Yeah.
Anyway, so how do you help people make these leaps? Like, I'm interested in some like real like nuts and bolts things. Like, when people tell me they see good CDEs, good doctors, I feel like you're one of them. So how do you end up being a friendly person who gets people to places? What's the process?
I think it comes from being a patient myself first, and having experienced the frustrations as a patient first. Some of my best consults and my most powerful or significant changes that come about is just by sitting and listening, and it sounds so basic. And it's like, of course, Rach, of course you just have to sit and listen to the patient and address their needs. But sometimes just sitting and listening to the struggles that they have and validating them. And I just sit there and I'm like, you know what? Diabetes sucks. It just sucks. It's hard work and it's annoying and it sucks and it's not going to go away. And we might just sit there and have a conversation about all the things that we hate about diabetes and how hard some things are. And then that might be it. That's the consult. That's it. And they will walk away feeling better than they have ever felt walking away from an appointment, ever before, just because they've had that time to sit and confront the feelings. You know how you mentioned they're tucking it away. I often say you're putting your diabetes, it's that can of beans, and you're putting it at the farthest spot in your kitchen cupboard, up in your kitchen cupboard. You've put it right at the back. And today we're going to get up on the stool in your kitchen cupboard, in your pantry, and get that can back out, because it's so easy to just tuck it back there. You do the bare minimum, you keep yourself alive. But at one day, I'm always going to be here. One day we're going to pull that can out and we're just going to open it, and the day that you can open it and you can just sit and confront the feeling that you're feeling, that's the day that you're going to be able to move forward.
I feel like you saw me buy pinto beans 3 weeks ago. You just freaked me out. I was like, how does she know I'm never going to make those pinto beans? I'm like, I don't have time to soak beans overnight.
Just tuck them on the top shelf.
I had such good intentions when I bought them. I was like, you know what?
Of course.
And now I'm just like, and I think I could do a really good job with them, right? Like, I think I can make my own baked beans, basically. And then I looked at a recipe and I was like, 12 hours, soak them overnight. What are you talking about?
Yeah. That's a diabetes consult. Often that's a diabetes consult. People walk and they're like, yeah, I'm going to change my carb ratio and I'm going to do this. And they walk away and they feel great. And the moment they walk out of the door, they don't often do any of the things. They don't do any of the things, because then they think, oh, I've got to soak that for 12 hours, and then
right.
And then it sort of hits them in a reality. And it's because they've never, I think you just need to front it and have that conversation where you're going to sit down and face that it's hard and it's not going to be easy and there's going to be bumps in the road. And two, that there's no such thing as perfection. I think that's something that keeps people with type 1 diabetes down, is that I've got patients that will make huge progress and then they'll come to me and they'll show me the reports and they'll be like, oh, I don't think this is going to be a good read. I don't think these reports are going to be too good to look at. And you look at it and, it's good. It's good. I don't know if they're expecting to have 100% time in range or unicorn stable flatline CGMs every day.
Okay.
But I think just to be reminded that that there's no such thing as perfect. You're not always going to have your perfect day. They need to be told that.
All right, Rachel, I'll make the beans. Leave me alone. Jesus. I was just going to donate them to a food kitchen or throw them away or something. But I mean, I guess if you're going to pressure me like this, then I'll take care of myself. Fine. Yeah. No, I think it's very, very important that to realize as a person who's trying to educate somebody about something, that it's not really something they're excited to hear about. And it's not something that sounds simple to them. And the traditional ways that it's been spoken about are confusing and not exactly something that makes you want to go like, yeah, I'm going to do this. When I'm speaking in public and I look out into the audience, there is always a couple of old time diabetics out there, just like people who've been in the fight for a long time, and they were there before glucose monitors, and probably they were there before decent insulin and decent meters and everything else. And every once in a while I'll speak and I'll have somebody come up to me who's, in their 60s, and they're like, this is just a revolution. I'm like, okay. Yeah, I'm like, all right, I've been doing it for a while, but I hear what you're saying. And they're excited by it and they hear it. But there are some people who just turn their nose up at it like it's foul. Yeah. And they do not want to hear that this thing that's overwhelmed them for so long and been so difficult is as easy as, I don't know, I would try more insulin here if I was you. They don't, I think it breaks their heart to hear it, kind of, and their reaction is just one that's it's there to protect their psyche. Like, he's wrong because or he doesn't understand. Right. It's more than that. Because if I'm right, then 30 years ago, someone could have just said that to them. There wasn't somebody saying these things 30 years ago, so it's not really possible, but it feels like a lot of wasted time. And I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but here's a little insight to who I really am. Wasted time is about the worst thing I can imagine. It really makes me upset. I don't like when people are, like, if you ever been together with friends, you remember when people used to get together with friends and there'd be people in rooms. I don't know. You're Australian. You guys probably aren't even afraid of COVID-19, right? Aren't you just a bunch of criminals? Like something like that. I hear prison populations are doing great with it because these people are probably they're around each other in such close quarters. Probably nothing makes them sick. But nevertheless, I don't think everyone in Australia is a criminal, and let's move forward. I think I've lost my train of thought. We can't do these things so early in the morning for me, Rach. All right, hold on. Let's go backwards. I was about to make a point. No,
it was good. It was good.
I think your brain is trying to save you. Do you know what I mean? Because when you hear that your health has been the way it has been for so many decades and there was an easier answer, I think that reality could break you. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's good. I've spoken to people where I've watched it happen, where they're like, why did no one tell me this? And it's crushing. And I can't say that I blame them. It's tough. So I'll be the bad guy sometimes. I'll stand up there and just go, all right, I'm wrong. It's fine. But some of those people have sway within the community. And that's when that's when it becomes dangerous for people moving forward. When you're a person who's lived with diabetes for 30 years, either as a caregiver or as a person in general, and you've got the ear of someone and you start saying things like, oh, that's dangerous talk. More insulin. What's that mean? Like, that's not a measurement. People are going to hurt themselves. People aren't hurting themselves now with their A1Cs is 9. Like, what's your point? Like, you really think if your A1C is 9 that an extra unit somewhere is going to be the ruination of you? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's the beginning of understanding that you need more insulin, and then you can see it happen and say, oh, wow, I used to go to 180, but now I'm going to 160. I wonder what a little more would do. I wonder what a little more would do. I wonder what a little sooner would do. And then you're there one day. It's just, I don't want to say it's easy, but I mean, Rachel, isn't it kind of easy? You know what I mean? Like, once you start doing it,
Yeah. I'm interested, Scott, if this was, if we were talking back 20, 30 years ago, and I think what the concepts that you talk about, I think it matches the time that we're in. That's where our technology is at.
Yeah.
And that's what we can do. But we had this conversation before we had CGM, I don't think we'd be here. I don't think you'd have your podcast the same way that you have it now, because I think
I'd be
without
insane.
this,
Yeah.
but because we have that CGM, we can be bold, So I don't know if people, maybe they might look back 30 years ago. They can't think that they've been ripped off because no one told them this. I think back to when I was a teenager, and I resent how much I struggled as a teenager with my type 1,
Mm-hmm.
and how much I felt like my medical team couldn't help me. I felt like every time I went in and everything was completely up and down and rada, I felt like I left just feeling even more hopeless, because they'd be like, well, there's no patterns here, so I'm not too sure what ratio or sensitivity factor I want to change. So let's not make any changes. And you go away and you monitor 5 times a day for the next 2 weeks and send us in your levels. I
Right.
think that was just something that happened every time. But I wonder, if I had CGM back then, would I be doing what I'm doing now?
Of course you would be. You'd figure it out somehow. You really would. And that's, listen, I hear you. You're 100% right that if I was in a time machine and I started saying these things in the 70s, people would be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. I can't even see what my blood sugar is. I can't just give myself too much insulin. That's how it would feel to them. But what I'm saying is that in present day, now that we know what we know and have what we have, for someone to sit in roadblock of other people's happiness in order to protect someone else's psyche is a weird decision to make. Like, I don't want someone who's had diabetes for 40 years to feel badly. I'm not saying that. But that person's still alive now, and they can move forward in a different space. Like, why do we keep pretending it's 1980? Is that it, so that the person who lived through 1980 doesn't feel bad? What about all the people who are here in 2020 who don't need to be living like it's 1980? Like, there's, if I'm good at being dispassionate about the diabetes and the numbers, I'm also good about being dispassionate about that. Like, and some people aren't. Some people are so worried about protecting feelings that they don't think about all the new people they're hurting by talking about this thing like it's 30 years ago. That's all. That's how I see it.
Some people are definitely stuck. Yeah, I 100% agree. I meet a lot of different educators, endocrinologists, all different disciplines that are just stuck. I agree that they're stuck in 1980 and they're not moving forward with what we're learning.
There's so much good stuff that exists right now. It's fascinating. It's fascinating to me that you'd want to ignore it or not learn it or whatever other reasons happen. Like, I get for the people who are living with it, but I mean, if you're teaching someone, if you're teaching someone how to live with diabetes and you see that there's a better way and you don't know that way, I don't know how it's not your full force in life to figure out that new way so that you can help those people. I don't know how in good conscience you keep telling people old information. That seems strange to me.
Yeah. I think they're just scared of the hypos. That's one thing that it's a common thing. People are just scared of their patients having hypos.
Yeah. No, I understand. Just,
yeah.
I mean, why are we not scared of the other part? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
like,
no, I
is
agree.
that what we've chosen? I heard someone say the other day that they're, obviously I know people say this in the community, medical community, but I haven't heard it in so long that it shocked me. My endo told me it's better to be high than low. And now I'm listening to your podcast and I don't know what to do. And I said, well, I'm not your doctor and I'm not even a doctor. I have no medical, I'm not giving you any advice. I was like, but all I can tell you is that I wake up every day and the first thing that I think about diabetes is I'd rather stop a lower falling blood sugar than fight with a high one. Like, I have to remember that.
Yeah.
That's got to be the first thought in your mind with diabetes. I want to be down here. I want to be playing down here, not up here. And if somebody has to have a juice box or has to do something to stop a low, it is far better than fighting with highs. And by the way, don't make that your norm for the rest of your life. Figure out why you're getting low and stop it at some point. But, in a world where everyone gets low anyway, why not get low this is going to sound weird because I don't mean this exactly this way. I was going to say, why not get low on purpose? I'm not saying that people are getting low on purpose. I'm saying I'd rather, you know what I mean? If you're going to be super high, eventually you're going to over bolus it and crash down low and have no idea how much insulin's in you and be in a complete just free fall that starts a eat the kitchen situation that throws you onto the roller coaster, you know? So why not just be 80 and go, oh, it's not working out this one time. I'm 65 before bed. I'm going to have to do something. You know, like that just makes sense to me. You know, I don't know. I'm glad it makes sense to you.
Yeah, no, but people, when they're on that roller coaster, you know, when they're on the roller coaster and they're up and down, I often just sit there with the report and I'm like, you are on the roller coaster and you've got no idea how hard you're making this for yourself because you're stuck on that up and that down. Mm-hmm. And like you said, that is just as dangerous and just as scary to be on that up and down roller coaster. But also, too, when you're on that roller coaster, everything's harder. When you're up there for hours. It takes so long to get back down. You finally get back down and you think, okay, great, now I'm going to hypo. And then you end up having a hypo and then you overtreat and you're up on the other end. But when you bring it all in, I always say to my patients, you're going to think I'm crazy. You're going to think I'm absolutely crazy. But the tighter that you manage it and the more that you sort of bump and nudge your levels, the easier your management actually is. Because if you're fighting just, you know, an angled arrow up or a straight arrow up, it's so much easier than fighting. And I know you guys don't use millimole, but, you know, a 15 millimole with a double arrow up, it actually becomes so much easier when you pull away from that fierce up and down roller coaster.
Yep. It's pretty easy. Like it's just, and I mean, it's really, there's not much to it. You know, it's, if you don't get high, you won't get high. And if you don't get high, you won't have to crush it with insulin. That's most definitely going to make you low and scare you, and rightfully so, into eating more food than you need. At some point, you have to say, enough's enough. I got to stop this somewhere, and not just keep this going forever. And it doesn't even stop. It goes into overnights. Like now you're getting super high overnight or super low overnight. It's at the point now where when someone shows me a graph, I'm like, I mean, do you not see what's happening here? You know, like it's but they don't. They see randomness. It all looks like chaos to them. And I mean, I'm glad to be able to see it, but I think everyone can see it eventually. I'm telling you, the longer this podcast goes and the more people it reaches, the more experiences I get to watch people have. And those experiences prove over and over and over again how doable this is for large variations of people. It's not just one kind of person who gets it. Like, you know, with the way diabetes is taught, traditionally, it is one person. It's that person who can put themselves in rock hard shape and stay in it and go to the gym at 5 a.m. no matter what. Like that person, diabetes is easy to them. They just put that kind of focus onto the diabetes. But for everyone else, to make them feel like, oh, this isn't for me, that good health isn't for me, is just a lie. It's not true. And I think that if you know, I swear to you, I think those pro tip episodes are, it's like a master's class in 30 hours on diabetes. And it really.
Oh, yeah.
Do you listen?
Yeah.
Have you listened to them?
I will just tell. Yes. Yeah. And I will just tell my patients, you know, go and listen to, you know, Scott's pro tips. Scott and Jenny, you know, I think you guys are incredible at summarizing just the real key concepts for optimal diabetes management, and then just portraying in a way that just seems so simple. You know, I would happily just have my patients just sit and listen to your podcast. I mean, it would put me out of a job, surely. And the thing is, if it didn't work, your podcast would not be where it is today.
Oh no, right. If we were just talking shit and just trying to have a popular podcast, you know, obviously people would tail away from it at some point. But listen, Jenny is, here's the secret about Jenny, is that she's so wrapped in this Midwestern feeling, and she's, you know, she's got that kind of like, it's a little all shucksy, but when you talk to her personally, like, I know Jenny's just me in a nicer wrapping. So like when it comes to diabetes, right? Like she wants to, like I think if you were alone with her, she'd be like, I don't know, use more insulin there. That just makes sense, doesn't it? And so she's, I just very much, I love her, and so happy. I actually just spoke the other day to Ginger Vieira, who is the person who introduced me to Jenny, and I thanked her again, and it's been years now. I was like, I really have to thank you, because Ginger sent me a note one day and said, you should have Jenny on your podcast. You guys really, you agree about diabetes. You should have her on. And and if it wasn't for that, I never would have met her, honestly. So yeah, I just think that it's very cool that you, as a person who's educating somebody, would say to somebody, hey, listen, have you heard about this podcast? All the pro tips are at diabetesprotip.com. Why don't you go check them out? Like, that thing to me is huge. And not just because it helps the podcast, which it really does, and I appreciate, but not just because it helps people, but because it moves us closer to my end goal, which is that the way you're talking to people is how educators should be talking to people. And that one day, not just this podcast won't be necessary, but people won't have to struggle and have these horrible decisions to make. Am I going to trade today for tomorrow? That is not something we should ask people to have to cognitively decide. Like, am I just going to enjoy today, but give away the last 15 years of my life? Is that what this is? That's not the only choice. And it's bizarre that, to me, it's bizarre that a lot of people feel like that is a choice. Like, I'm just going to, live fast and die hard. Did I get that saying wrong? What is that saying? Live fast and die young? No, I think it's die. You don't know. You're from Australia. You say concession, and it doesn't even mean the same thing. How are you going to know? All of your animals have pockets, and you're trying to tell me you understand? Yeah, it's bizarre. Do you sit here and think...
No, but you're right. I think...
Good.
Go on.
No, you were going to agree with me. I never stop anybody from agreeing with me. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, I agree. I think there is a huge opportunity to change the landscape of diabetes healthcare. I think that's the reason I got into becoming a diabetes educator, because we need to change the healthscape, the landscape of diabetes education. 100%. There's a whole other way that it can be done, a completely different way. So I have the same vision, Scott. I have the exact same vision.
Thank you. Well, I have a phone call tomorrow with a large organization that is very much in charge of how healthcare educators are directed, and I am going to put my full excitement and thought into that phone call, and then they're going to ignore me. But just so you know, I'm not giving up.
Yeah, I do that every day.
Yeah.
Every day.
I booked this phone call, and I was like, oh, here's an example of me talking for 20 minutes, everybody going, oh, yeah, and then hanging up the phone and going, that guy's a lunatic. So, but I'm not going to stop.
He's crazy.
Oh, please. We can't tell people that. That'll kill them. Sure it will. Yeah. The podcast is reaching all the people it's reaching, because, it's not, like, to your point, like, it is what it is. It works. If it didn't work, it wouldn't work. By the way, I want you to know that I have completely decided to find Helena Safia Hamami, who is part of the snail venom study, and I'm going to get her on the damn podcast. I am going to kill myself to get this woman on the podcast to tell me about this. She got her PhD at the University of Melbourne, but she's on staff of the
Melbourne. I just love the way you said that.
Well, the way I said that. Again, by the way, all that really thoughtful stuff you just said about the state of healthcare, I was going to say, do you ever sit in Australia and wonder why our animals don't have pockets? So thank God I let you go instead.
I've never considered that our animals have pockets.
You've never looked at America and been like, why do those deer not have pockets on them somewhere?
Where are their pockets?
Where's the tiger's pocket? I mean, you're closer to Africa. Did you ever just be like, where are the lion's pockets at? I don't understand. How does a caribou not have a pocket? See? You got to flip things around once in a while.
Oh, my life has changed. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so
I'll never
tell me how
look at an animal the same.
Tell me how I just mispronounced that city. What should I have said?
Melbourne.
You just swallowed like 5 of the letters. Just so you know, you went Melbourne.
Yeah.
Did I get closer?
just Melbourne. Yeah, that was closer.
It's like you fell asleep after the L. You were like,
Melbourne.
Where are you from? Melbourne. What? Yeah. I said it more correctly mumbling it than I did when I was pronouncing the letters. And you're from like, where are you from? Brisbane? Where's that from? How did this happen to you people? Is it because you're all like surrounded by the water? Is it scary being surrounded by water?
No, it's great because we get less coronavirus. It's excellent. This is the best time to be living on an island.
When that place caught fire, you never once thought there's nowhere to run?
That's fine. You just go to the water. We got plenty of water around.
And then there's sharks.
Just run to the edge. Run to the edge.
Run to the sharks? Is that what you just said? Run out to the great whites that Shark Week wouldn't exist without, and just, good luck. You better start building a raft. That's all I'm saying. And where are you going to go? You're going to have to go to New Zealand.
Yeah, look, I hadn't thought that far.
Yeah, well, you better figure it out.
I need a plan.
We have to save you. You're the only one helping people. Well, that's not true, but you're helping people with diabetes in Australia. We need to save you. So do you think that the popularity, I'm going to let you go in a second, but do you think the popularity of the podcast in Australia can specifically be attributed to the fact that this is not the kind of information you can get there? Or is there a rise in diabetes there? Like, I am starting to look at where diabetes is more prevalent and where the podcast is more popular. And there is, I guess, not unsurprisingly, a correlation. It just wasn't something I ever considered before.
Yeah, I think it was the former of what you said, that you can't get this information. This is not like a freely accessible information. You can go to hundreds of different diabetes doctors or diabetes nurses, but the information that you get on this podcast it's another level. You just can't access that.
Wow, I wish you knew me my whole life so you'd know how ridiculous that feels for me to hear.
Unless, of course, if they come and see me, but otherwise.
Let me just tell you the opposite of this. If you and I grew up together and you felt like that now, when you explained it to somebody, you would say something like this: can you believe that idiot Scott, like, you remember Scott, right, from school? Yeah, he's doing it. It's weird. Like, people listen and it's helping them. It doesn't make any, how was it him? Trust me, it doesn't make any sense that it shouldn't be me, which I think is, or even a person like me, I don't think, but I think that's why it is, because I had no preconceived notion of what was right. And when I heard things that are right, just like I had been doing my entire life, I was like, that doesn't make sense. I'm not doing that. Yeah, like, I can remember being a little kid and my dad saying, you need to be nice to him. He's your elder. And even at like 9 years old, I pulled my father aside and I was like, listen, I don't know if you realize this or not, that guy's a jackass. And I am not willing to give him any kind of respect or time just because he was born before I was. Like, those things that don't make sense to me have never made sense to me. And I do not spend any time with bullshit, really. Like, that just it's not okay for me. So when I saw things about diabetes that didn't make sense, I got trapped like everybody else. I was like, this is right. This is what I'm being told. But it did not take me long to say, I am not going to let this make me crazy or make me give up on my daughter's health. So I'm going to throw away everything that everyone's saying and think of something else, because this is just not okay. Yeah. So I'm happy. Yeah.
But I think that's what makes it so, I don't know if I would say relatable, but as an Australian, I would say you're just an honest, genuine bloke. That's how I would describe you. And I think having those traits makes it feel all the more achievable. I think that's part of it.
You're just saying that because I'm wearing pants with pockets, and subconsciously
I love the pockets.
You love the pockets, really. And it's
you got me.
By the way, Rachel loves the pockets. Pretty close to the title of this episode, just so you know. Listen, I really appreciate that. And I'm going to have to start telling my wife, listen, be nicer to me, because I could just throw myself back on the market to people with diabetes and I could get a nice line of ladies. So, not that I'm not saying you, I'm just saying in general, there are people who There are people who respect me. Just none of them live with me. That's just everybody's life, I think, right? Like, I always imagine, like, Peyton Manning, or wait, I need an Australian. Like, do you have any famous people there? I got it now. Imagine that Hemsworth guy, right? Is he okay? Do we like him?
Yeah.
All right. By the way,
we like him.
Which one do you prefer? The Thor or the other one?
Liam, the other one.
The other one,
The other
okay.
one.
So let's imagine Liam has some children. Did he not date the Miley Cyrus? That must have brought you down a little bit, huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it did. Yeah.
Although I like her, I'm just saying, she seems a little strange. But that's
I just wouldn't think it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, he comes in the morning like a wrecking ball. He's got these children, and he's going to bring them breakfast, and he does. I don't think the kids sit there and think, Liam Hemsworth just brought us breakfast. I think that idiot made my cereal soggy. Like, that's how they, you know what I mean? Like, nobody in your own home sees you. Not that I'm Liam Hemsworth. I'm just saying, trust me, I'm probably the furthest thing from Liam Hemsworth. I don't even know who he is. But all this is making me think of is that inappropriate joke that I've heard so many women who love the Marvel movies tell. They talk about Chris Hemsworth, and they say, I'd let him make me Thor. Did that even resonate with you? Did that get to you?
Yeah.
Should I have swallowed the last few words and just went Thor like that? Would you have understood better? All right, listen. This is getting off the rails, and I've already recorded a weird episode this week, so I can't do too many more. I think I'm getting too comfortable doing this, by the way, in case you're wondering. I used to feel like there was a need for the podcast episodes to have some sort of I don't know, like, conformity, and now I don't even care. I'm just like, let's just keep talking. Anyway, did we not say anything that you meant to say that I talked over or made pocket jokes around it? Or are we good?
No. I came in with no intention. So no, that's it. It's good.
There you go.
I did a Scott. I was like, I'll come in with no idea what we're going to talk about, and see what happens.
When people over prepare for the podcast, it makes me nervous when they start talking, and I think they're more prepared for this than I am. I start feeling inadequate. I was like, oh geez, should I have made a list? I didn't sometimes I'll be talking to somebody. No lie. Hold on a second. I'll be talking to somebody and I'll hear like paper rattle in the background. I'm like, do you have paper? And they're like, yeah. Like, what's written on it? And they start telling me, I'm like, oh my gosh, wow. Thank you. Appreciate you taking this so seriously. I'll give you this and then I'll let you go. Don't let this be crushing. 5 seconds before I record with people, I do a search in my inbox for their name, look for their email, and go, oh, yeah, Australia, CDE, I remember this. And then I go, hi, Rachel. And then we start talking. And I think that's part of my genius. Yep. So whatever. And I don't mean genius in the standard sense of the word. I mean genius in the Australian sense, sort of like concession. So I need you to look into that for me and find out why they're called concession
I'm
cards.
going to. That's my first goal as soon as I get off this.
Thank you. You have 6 months to tell me, but if you could just send me an email and tell me why they're called concession cards, I'm going to plug it in at the end of the episode. All right, listen, go to bed. It's late there. You have to rest up so you can run away from wild animals and snakes and things like that. And you live in a city, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So you don't like normally see a snake. Is that right?
A snake? Oh, yeah. No, there's still snakes in the backyard.
Are they big and scary? Can they hurt you, or are they just regular ones?
It depends. I mean, most of them, they're okay. Most of them, like a green tree, they're not going to hurt you. But definitely, I would say, at least once a year, you'll have a brown snake in the pool or in the back garden or something. And
a brown snake in the pool sounds like a little kid took a shit in the pool, but that's not what you're saying. You're saying that
no.
Okay.
No.
You're saying and so when there's a brown snake or a venomous snake in your pool, what do you do? What's the next step?
You get the pool net, the pool cleaner, and try and just sort of flick it away. Get it out, flick it away.
What if it goes in your house?
Well, you close the doors. I feel like people have such an interesting imagination about Australia.
You just, to me, here's what you just said to me. I live on Mars. That's what you just said to me. Like,
Yeah.
You just said, Scott, we can't even breathe. The atmosphere here is not hospitable to life. Like, that's what you just said. Like, my brain is yelling, why won't this woman move out of that wasteland? Like a snake in your... But I realize there are places in America where, like, you know, bears wander into people's yards and there are rattlesnakes.
Exactly.
But I don't understand why people don't leave those places either, just so you know. I got to be honest with you. If I woke up one day and there was a bear at my back door, I wouldn't live here 3 days from now. I'd just be like, I got to go.
Gosh.
Yeah. But I'm maybe a word that I shouldn't say on the podcast. All right. I'm going to stop the recording and tell you that I was going to say that. That seems unfair, doesn't it? Thanks so much to Rachel for coming on the show and sharing her story and giving the chit chat with me. I had a great time. Thanks also to the Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor and the Omnipod tubeless insulin pump. Find out more at dexcom.com/juicebox. myomnipod.com/juicebox. And don't forget the T1D exchange, t1dexchange.com/juicebox. Don't forget to support the T1D exchange by going to t1dexchange.com/juicebox. Looking for those diabetes pro tip episodes that you hear everybody talking about? You can find them right there in your podcast player or at diabetesprotip.com. I'll be back very soon with another episode made just for you. How about a little bonus chit chat from right before we started recording this episode? You talk when you were speaking prior with the video and it just went, so I wasn't really hearing you.
Okay.
And then all of my bad jokes about like what part of the Australian jungle you live in started popping into my head. So, it's like, oh, this is it. She lives she's somewhere on a koala bear farm in the middle of that island.
That's exactly it. Accurate representation.
Thank you so much. I really, I like to show off my geography during the podcast. No, this is actually better. It hasn't done it since then, so that's good. Not that it wasn't nice to see.
Excellent.
But it'll be more important if people can hear. I actually left a little bit in the episode I put up yesterday, which I think I recorded like 6 months ago. But I left a little bit of it in of us talking in the beginning about that. And the truth is, with a podcast, if it doesn't sound right, it doesn't matter what you're saying. People will flake out and just leave it. They won't listen to bad audio.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter what you're talking about. You could be like, so this is how you become a billionaire. And people will be like, not if it's going to go in and out. It's not. I'm not listening. So it's interesting what people will spend their time with and not. Although I have to agree with them. I don't like it to sound poorly either. Are you good on that end?
Yeah, no, I'm great. Thank you.
Yeah. Get back going. And all right. What time is it there?
It's 9 p.m.
For some reason, it's Australia week here. So you are the third person from Australia I've recorded with in less than a week.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you got a lot to go here because I'm completely out of stupid things to say about Australia. So you and I are going to have a real conversation.